With all those eyes focused on him, the ball popped loose from Don's hands without anyone's touching him. He went after it on his hands and knees, desperately trying to cover it and redeem himself, but he couldn't get to it. A groan went up from the crowd as El Paso Austin came up with the ball. He came off the field, his eyes downcast and brooding, his eagerness to do well in this first game and live up to the legend of Charlie putting his whole body out of sync. God almighty, he said to no one in particular on the sideline. I can't believe that. El Paso Austin was held to 6 yards in 3 plays. The hapless Austin running back suffocating under a pile of 5 or 6 raging dogs in black shirts. Swarm the ball! That's what the coaches had told the Permian players time after time after time. Never let up, swarm the ball every play. Permian took over after a punt. With a first down inside El Paso territory at the 47, Winchell dropped back to pass. He saw flanker Robert Brown open, but the touch was too soft and the ball fluttered. A high fly up for grabs, the kind of pass that had become a Winchell trademark the year before, etched with hesitation. It was destined for an interception, but the El Paso defensive back mistimed. The ball plopped into Brown's hands, a gift, an absolute gift, and he had a clear path down the left sideline. He scored, and the ice was broken. Winchell, coming back to the sideline almost, but not quite, looked pleased with himself. A tiny look of relief, perhaps even the glimmer of a smile. "What do you think?" he said, motioning to the crowd, to the stadium, to the starry beauty of it all. "You ain't seen nothin' yet. Wait till Midland Lee." Permian scored twice more in the first half to go ahead 21-0. Winchell threw a 5-yard touchdown pass to Hill and then made it 3 when he hooked up with Brown for a 61-yard bomb with 24 seconds left. In the locker room at halftime, he seemed as if he was walking on air. 3 touchdown passes in the first half. 3! Last season, it had taken him his first 4 games to get to 3 touchdown passes, and he only had 11 the entire season in 15 games. As for Billingsley, his debut as a starter had become further mired after that first nervous fumble. Regaining his composure, he had peeled off a nice 34-yard run on a sweep. But then, with time running out in the half, he had fumbled again, as if the ghost of Charlie caused the football to go bouncing along the turf like a basketball. The mixture of excitement and anticipation had him in knots, his legs working so hard he looked like a cartoon character going at fast-forward speed. The coaches, who had always harbored concerns about Billingsley because of his lifestyle, were not terribly surprised. They knew of his drinking and partying and the fact that he and his father moved around a lot. "I think we got a big-ass choke dog on our hands," said one at halftime. Gaines called Billingsley into the little coach's room and threw him a football. "Hold on to it," he said. Then Ballou took him aside. "Just put that behind you. If you worry about it, it's going to screw you up. It's history." The locker room was hot and steamy, and Gaines and his 4 assistants were hardly euphoric. The Panthers were dominating every facet of the game, but fumbles and penalties had kept Permian from leading 35-0 at the half. "We should have had 2 more touchdowns," said defensive coordinator Hollingshead. "Don laid it on the ground." Billingsley continued to drown deeper and deeper the second half. After Permian took over on downs on its 41, he took the handoff and had clear sailing on the right flank. But his feet were still moving too fast for him, and he slipped, adding to the rumbles that Charlie Billingsley's boy sure as hell wasn't going to follow in his father's footsteps, at least not on the football field. "God damn," said Hollingshead derisively. If Billingsley could do nothing right, Winchell could do nothing wrong. 3 plays later, he threw his 4th touchdown pass of the night, tying a Permian record for most touchdown passes in a game. The game ended with Permian beating El Paso Austin 49-0. El Paso Austin had been a helpless opponent, but even so, the performance of Winchell had been wonderful. He had had the best game of his life, 7 for 9 passing 194 yards and 4 touchdowns. His performance proved how high he could soar when he could unleash himself from the constant self-doubt that had entrapped him after the death of Billy. Billingsley's starting debut had been just the opposite. It was hardly the kind of game that would make him a legend alongside Charlie, or anyone else for that matter. And now there was something else to contend with, something that to Don's way of thinking was disappointing but somehow inevitable. It began at halftime when Gaines said he was going to let an untested junior named Chris Comer play the entire second half at fullback. It was Comer's first game ever on the Permian varsity, and it was only because of the injury to Booby that he was there at all. Otherwise, he would have been back on the junior varsity. He had talent, but the coaches were wary of him. The previous school year, he had been ineligible for spring practice because of academic problems, which put him way down in the doghouse. The coaches questioned his work habits and desire, and they were hardly inspired by his background, from the South Side, living not with his parents but with his grandmother. But these concerns began to lessen when Comer took the ball early in the third quarter at the 50, lingered behind the line for a split second until a tiny alleyway developed, turning the corner, broke past two defenders with an acceleration of speed, and dashed down the sideline for a touchdown. The run had been so stunning that it was hard to know what to make of it. Had it been a fluke? Or in the aftermath of Booby's knee problems, had he just become the new star running back of Permian High School? When he did it again, this time on a 27-yard touchdown where he bullied his way past several tacklers, the answer became obvious. Ballou, who had spent most of the game in the press box relaying offensive signals to Gaines over the headset, moved down to the sidelines in the waning moments of the game, clearly beside himself. He started to gush about Comer. Then he eyed Booby, who had had knee surgery the day before. He obviously did not want to hurt Booby's feelings by raving in front of him about someone else. He moved until Booby was out of earshot. Then he opened up like an excited child. "Did you see that?" said Ballou of Comer's performance, 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Comer's With the injury to Booby, Billingsley had thought he might get the ball more often. But if Comer continued to run as he had tonight, Billingsley could pretty much forget about that. The ball would go to Comer on the pitches and the sweeps, and he would lead the noble but anonymous charge trying to take out the defensive ends and the linebackers. Comer would get all the touchdowns, all the attention, all the glory, and Billingsley would get the aches and pains of being a blocking back. That sure as hell wasn't why he had given up so much to come to Permian, to have a black kid come in and steal away his chance at glory. It was something his father had never had to contend with. There wasn't one black around when Charlie played. Back then, they all went to high school on the South Side, had their own stadium, and as long as they stayed put, there was no problem. But things were different now. Don knew they had talent. It was just the way some of them kind of swaggered around that bothered him. How some of them seemed to do whatever they wanted in practice and the coaches let them get away with it. It seemed obvious to him that the Permian system was prejudiced against him. It had rules for blacks and then rules for everybody else. In practice, they do what they want to do, and they still start Friday night, he said. There are different rules for black and white at Permian. So the injury to Booby hadn't made a damn bit of difference. As he later looked back on it, it seemed that the minute one black player got hurt, there was another to take over. "I didn't get to carry the ball," was how Don Billingsley sized it up. They moved up another to carry the ball.